Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the day you can't take anything seriously because it's April Fool's, which, yes, actually, this is not part of a joke, but it was Apple's birthday. 45 years ago, this is when they officially registered as a business. They did choose April 1st for some reason. I guess it was just the most convenient time for Steve to make the filing. It happens. There's actual stuff that gets done on April Fool's sometimes, but yeah, you really can't take anything seriously today. And I don't know how you guys feel about it. I mean, it's always fun to make April Fool's jokes, but when you're at the other end of it, it always feels much worse. It's always like, oh, right, it's the day where nothing makes sense, and we just have to kind of do our best to sort through all the fake news to find the real news. But I guess in today's climate, we better just get used to that in general, every day of the year. But everyone gets to justify their clickbait today. Everyone gets to justify all of their behavior that's dishonest because it's just like, well, it's April Fool's. We can get away with it. So that's the world we've come to. Thank you for the bits, Matt Apple. But yeah, it's been a pretty impressive 45 years for Apple, thinking about how much in our world has changed, kind of how Steve Jobs has talked about putting a dent in the universe between the personal computer taking over, turning that into a mobile computer, turning that into iPods, turning that into smartphones, now turning that into wearables and wireless headphones. And man, it's just a completely different world, I feel like, than if Apple didn't exist or if Jobs didn't pioneer it. I'm sure there would have been other companies or other brands or businesses that would have kind of taken personal computing in a somewhat similar direction, but I just feel like I have a feeling it would have been a lot slower of an adoption rate or a lot different world if we didn't have Apple kind of pushing the boundary of what could be done or what people could be comfortable with in regards to everyday technology. So I'm grateful for that. And hopefully we can celebrate Apple's birthday at the same time as we make fools out of each other. What about the Mac dog? Yeah, I did see Marquez post his video on that. I didn't watch the video yet, but I have known for how many years has he had that dog now? It's been a while. 31 Flavor says I was expecting that after the countdown to just get a Rickroll from you. I I was tempted, but honestly, with how Twitch is with copyright strikes, I didn't want to tempt it. Honestly, copyright law is so bizarre and vague that I don't understand how half the stuff that gets on YouTube doesn't get taken down or copyright claimed to that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm honestly pretty amazed that so much of the internet is still legal, and knowing how vague copyright law is and how many issues I've run into that myself. So yeah, that's why I'm like, I'm not going to chance it, because on Twitch, copyright strikes do not expire, which is kind of scary. If you get one, you get it forever. And if you get three, they ban your account permanently. You can't make an alternative one. You can't come back. So yeah, it's not something you want to chance around with. So that's why I'm not going to take any chances. But that would be funny. I agree. I think it will be a site refresh, no April event. I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I talked about that in yesterday's video. I think that there's still a chance there could be an April event. I'm not saying it's impossible. It just feels weird for them to, if they do announce Quadruple UDC before a spring event is announced, it's usually because they're announcing Quadruple UDC like way in advance. It's typically like a February or early March announcement. Now the fact that it's officially April, we're one quarter through the year, man, it moves fast, right? We're already 3 months into 2021, 4 months in technically with April. Yeah, it would feel very, very bizarre to me that they would wait this long to announce Quadruple UDC, but also wait a little bit longer, just because the events are so close together. What people are describing, if there is like a April 16th or whenever it is, mid-April event would only really be like 6 to 7 weeks before Quadruple UDC. So knowing Apple, I think they would rather just have a bigger June event with lots of hardware announcements and new things to talk about. But yeah, instead having like a mini event not even 2 months before the June event, I don't know. It feels bizarre, but again, Apple's been doing weird things. Like clearly last year they were very comfortable with having events back to back, September, October, November events all real close together. So who knows? Maybe they're comfortable with that now, but it's hard to tell in my opinion. YouTube ones expire, yes, Kuzith, after about I think 90 days they expire. And if you get 3 copyright strikes within a 90-day period, that's when your account gets banned. But I briefly last year had 2, both of which were not justified. One was a guy extorting people and abusing the copyright system, and the other was a guy issuing copyright strikes who did not know what he was doing. And I reached out to him, and once I reached out to him and said, I can put your name in the description. I didn't even know it was yours. I just got it from a website that didn't credit you. And he said, "Oh, okay, sure. I'll remove the strike if you credit me," which is not what strikes are for. Strikes are not intended to be issued just because you didn't receive credit. It's received because you didn't want that content posted anywhere else. If you're okay with people reposting your content with credit, you don't issue copyright strikes. You just reach out to them and ask for that. But either way, it was really sketchy for a little while there, but I'm glad that's over now, and I'm glad the copyright issues are in the past. But the air power from Xiaomi doesn't work for Apple Watches, right? I know there's a 99% chance it doesn't, but if it does, it will be in my shopping cart as soon as possible. Air power from Xiaomi doesn't technically really exist. I mean, for one, it's like a huge box. And the challenge of charging things over the air is not the actual process of sending a charge. That is relatively trivial. The challenge is sending a charge safely, which they are not, which has not been able to be mass produced at scale and shipped out to tons of people. Is because, yeah, in a closed box scenario in the R&D department, you can technically send a charge over the air and make a device go up, but can you find a way to do that doesn't give everyone in the room cancer? That's the challenge. And because Xiaomi did not give a timeline or a price or an estimated expected date of when they're shipping that thing, it's probably because that's the exact same issue Xiaomi is having. They're like, we've technically found a way to do it, but we're not going to ship it yet because we haven't figured out a way to do this safely. Who knows? Maybe in China their laws are more lax about that. So it's not really air power, honestly. The tech Xiaomi has developed, I doubt, is much different from all the stuff other companies have come up with internally. It's just a safety thing. Let's see. Are you sure it isn't 397th March 2020? Feels like it. Yeah, it kind of does sometimes. I don't blame you. Brian said processor's 100% accurate. Source said it's in April, so I think I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but someone did point out that Prosser has gotten the last 3 events incorrect date-wise. I mean, he's gotten a lot of stuff right, but he's also gotten a lot of stuff wrong, so that's why I'm pretty hesitant to. If he had a 100% source tell him there would be an April event, why did they then agree to shave his eyebrows if it wasn't on March 21st? And why would you report things that aren't from the 100% accurate source? I don't know. That's the messy thing about all leaks to me, is it's like, okay, so he has a bunch of sources, but he's not telling us which is which. You know, when he gets a leak from a source with a 50% credibility rating, does he disclose that and say, actually, this isn't a reliable source, but I'm going to report on it anyway? Because to me, like, it feels like every report we hear is someone saying, oh, this is from a super reliable source. It's same thing he said about air power. We know how that ended. He also said, like, Apple TV and new AirPods were ready to ship like a year ago. He also said Final Cut and Xcode would come out a year ago, and it never did for the iPad. And so I don't know. It's just a bunch of bumpy track record to me. How will you redesign the iPad mini? How would I do it? Man, that's a video I've probably made so many times, but I still feel so passionately about it. I love the iPad Pro. This is my favorite Apple device by far, and the only thing I would love more is if they just diversified this in more ways. If they made a version of this iPad but smaller to the point that you could hold it in your hand, that would be downright iPhone replacement territory, probably for some people, not everybody. But if you could get to the point where you had an iPad OS device that was on such a small, portable, not an iPhone though, it'd still have a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it'd be better at split screen, and it could still have an LCD. I'd be fine with that, 120 hertz. It doesn't need to be OLED and that kind of thing. But if it was Type C and you could hold it in one hand, and you had all of the great advantages of the iPadOS aspect ratio and the split screen multitasking and thing. Oh man, I think that would be such a gorgeous iPad. I really wish they would make it, but it sounds like they're not going to, from what I've read. It sounds like there's an iPad mini in development, but it's just basically the same iPad mini we have now, just with a slightly bigger screen, but still a home button, no new updated design, still Lightning. Yeah, I don't know. No, I heard what people say on his podcast. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense. If you heard someone tell you that if someone who has 100% accuracy told you that there would be an event at some point, but then you decide to put all of your reputation on it being the 21st, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. But I don't know. All I'm saying is in the past 2 to 3 years of following Prosser's leaks, it seems to be he's very, very confident until he's proven incorrect. And then he goes back. It's like he's like almost 100% convinced something is going to happen, really, really sold on it until it's proven otherwise, and then he backs out. So that's why I'm very, very doubtful. I recall how many people were jumping down my throat when I said that, okay, the iPhone 12 won't have 120 hertz. It's not happening. There's no promotion. Ross Young, this display chain analyst, is saying otherwise. And then right after I did that, he was like, no, you wait. I've been hearing other things, and there's going to be 120 hertz. Don't give up hope yet. And obviously, all for nothing, because that didn't go anywhere. But he's very, very confident in the moment. In fact, I recall him saying Apple Glass was going to come out around March of this year. I recall him saying $500 could be unveiled end of 2020 or March of 2021. At least that's what I recall him reporting on. I put little events in my calendar when he would make those types of claims. I'm like, is this happening? Because that's what he said was going to happen. He also said the iPhone SE Plus was going to come out this March at a time. I don't know if he backtracked on that, but basically he'll report on anything he hears that can generate enough traction. So yeah, there can be schedules changes, but we can never prove that. It could also just be he has inadequate sources, or he doesn't really know what's going to happen, but he wants to report on things because he knows that'll get attention. That could be a huge part of it. There's no way to prove or disprove a lot of these schedule things, which is why I'm hesitant to believe. Just like, oh, it was right at a time, but now it is not right anymore. It's like if it can change, then it's still an inaccurate leak. You still don't know what's going to happen, so don't act like you do. There's a lot of things I feel like we shouldn't really give credit to leakers who are just agreeing with other leakers. I feel like that system can be abused pretty easily. Like if I just follow Kang and I just pay attention to whatever Kang is saying and then agree with everything Kang says, then I could easily make my credibility rating go really, really high if I just agreed with things that other people said. And I felt like that's what a lot of what has happened in the leaker community in general is there's a lot of fake, there's a lot of phonies that basically will just come forward and agree with what other people have already put forward, and then they get credited as, oh, they were accurate, they got that report correct. But it's like, they heard that from someone who's accurate, so I don't understand it. Let's see. How did he even think the tech for Apple Glass? I don't know. It sounded way too early, way too good to be true, in my opinion. But let's see. Iron Joey says, chances that the new Pros only come in 12.9-inch size with mini LED, and if you want the smaller size, you have to go with the Air. Man, I don't want that to be the case because I know a ton of people that like the 11-inch Pro, but I feel like I feel like there's a chance of that because the rumors and everything we've heard about the 11-inch iPad Pro have been really, really quiet. Every report we've heard, every leak we've heard have been very, very like 12.9-inch dominant. Everyone's saying it's the 12.9-inch iPad that has mini LED and it has 5G. And part of me is like, yeah, why would they refresh the 11-inch Pro if it doesn't have mini LED? That would be a pretty minor refresh. It would just be like, okay, we stuffed a 5G modem in this iPad and now it has a faster chip. But honestly, there's not a ton of, I don't know. It's like, if you're not planning on announcing Final Cut or some type of revamped version of iPad OS to take advantage of some more processing power, like it doesn't, whether it's the A12Z chip or the A14X chip doesn't make a huge difference in my opinion. Like it's like an iPad Pro with the same software we have today, but with an M1 chip inside it doesn't really make a huge difference, right? You would just export things in LumaFusion or iMovie a little bit faster. That's like I feel like we've kind of tapped out the use case and practical advantages of the A12X and A12Z chip. It's like what we use an iPad for now, that chip is powerful enough to do everything great. But if we're going to improve the chip performance and improve the graphics on our iPads further, we're going to need some more software to take advantage of that. We're at that point where it's kind of can't really go much further at this point. Let's see. Is Apple spreading false news for leakers to pick up? Some sort of long game April Fools? I don't think so. I know it sounds fun. I mean, it would be really, really funny if... Ooh, wrong way. It'd be really, really funny if Apple was just intentionally trying to weed out leakers and sending out false information to figure out who's being dishonest and stuff. But genuinely, I think that the tech community and leakers in general think that they're much more influential or bigger than they really are. It's really just a tech community thing. I don't think Apple cares much about us. I don't think that they think we make a big impact anyway. So I don't think that's happening. It would be cool, I agree. And if we got some way of confirming that, either from, I don't know, Phil Schiller or Johnny Ive, and they say, oh yeah, Apple spreads false information in the market all the time. A lot of it wouldn't really make sense, though. If they set out false expectations and made claims for leaks that sounded really good but then didn't happen, that seems like it would damage Apple's reputation, not help it. So I don't get it. I don't think that's what's happening. Let's see. Yeah, Gurman says something. Everyone, nod and wave, pretty much. Apple is such a huge company that using fake leaks to root out leakers would be nearly impossible anyway. Yeah, that's true. The size of the company, like, I don't know how you would figure out who exactly is leaking information and how that would work. What would you tell them? Like, tell everyone that an iPhone SE Plus is coming out next year with an A14 chip. Tell everyone that now, and then let's see who gets that information. I don't know. It doesn't. I think Apple's very busy with supply chains and manufacturing and R&D and stuff, and that's probably where most of their attention is going. I don't think the majority of their attention is like, dang it, those leakers, they got us again. Like, I really just think they genuinely don't care. Silverboy, thank you for the Twitch Prime. Also, I know they're not here, but I just wanted to go on record thanking 1234 me for the Twitch Prime 3 days ago, Expos1 for the Twitch Prime 4 days ago. Is that no, that's a duplicate notification. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if those people are watching or not, but they subscribed via Twitch Prime when I wasn't available. Had to take some time off for some other stuff going on last week in my personal life. Hopefully we've gotten that taken care of now, but yeah, it's I'm scaling back the work hours a little bit. I don't know who. Oh, I thought for some reason when you say Apple bought Megapacks that you meant like a mobile battery bank company. But yes, I did see that Apple is buying big Apple's buying big Megapacks from Tesla, which is kind of cool because the companies have notoriously had somewhat bad blood between each other, and like Tesla has been known to lose some of their employees to Apple with their self-driving car, electric car project, and Elon Musk has been on the record talking about how Apple is probably going to go head-to-head with Tesla, but that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And Elon Musk was expecting Apple to have a car out by 2020. They still don't. So I know how you feel about it, Byron, but I'm just going to stay my ground here and go on the record saying I still don't think Apple's going to announce a car. Maybe a partnership with another car brand where they work on some of the software, but just a in-house design from the ground up. I still don't think they're going to do it, but Apple and Tesla fought over employees, and obviously Elon Musk has tried to meet with Tim Cook about potentially buying Tesla in the past. Apple tried to buy Tesla back in 2013. So they have kind of bad blood between a bit of the higher ups, I imagine. I at the same time, though, I imagine there's probably a huge number of Apple's employees that are big Tesla fans. The companies share very similar ideologies, and they have a lot of software choices in common. And Tesla is often looked at as kind of the Apple of the car industry because of how much they like removing things and going all in on screen and kind of pushing the boundaries of what can be done. It feels like almost the same company sometimes when it comes to like how difficult it is to work on your own iPhone, how difficult it is to work on your Tesla, or Apple has decided you don't need the headphone jack or you don't need the charge port anymore. And Tesla has decided you don't need a full steering wheel anymore. Tesla's decided you don't need gear stalks anymore. They think about things very differently, and they challenge innovation in the sense of what do we not need, which I think is important. I feel like that's a underappreciated part of Apple's history. Is Steve Jobs was very proud of all of the things they didn't do. Not so much that they did do. In fact, he went on the record saying how proud he was of the types of things they said no to, just as much as he was proud of the things that they came up with. So the future of tech and innovation is not always just about coming up with a new idea or a new implementation or a new form factor. A lot of it comes down to figuring out what shouldn't be done, when to say no, when to stop. And Steve was known for that, figuring out like, okay, we've tried the touchscreen Mac. We made some touchscreen MacBooks internally, and we discovered that they make for good demo, but for prolonged use, they're not very useful, and you strain your hands pretty quickly. And you need to be able to have that barrier between a touch interface and a keyboard and mouse interface, which is why I love how simple it is to disconnect my keyboard case from my iPad, because I can go all in on touch when I need to, but then when it's on the keyboard case, I pretty much go all in on keyboard and trackpad. So they understand the pros and cons of both, but realize that it's not just all about saying yes to every new technology, every new idea we can come up with. Doesn't matter how it's implemented, we just need to embrace it, whether it's a foldable, whether it's a flip, whether it's a touchscreen laptop. We just got to do it because we figured out how to do it. Or 5G, is this very useful? Not really, but 5G, put it on everything. But Apple's guilty of that now too. I don't know, maybe Steve Jobs would have been less interested in 5G. I'm not sure. There's rumors that Apple will launch Apple Glass at WWDC because the Memoji characters on the WWE Invitational wear glasses. Real or Apple teasing us? I don't think they're teasing you. I just think you guys are imagining things that aren't there. This exact same thing happened. I'm not joking. I'm not making this up. This exact same thing happened last year's WWDC. When they announced it, it was basically Memojis looking at MacBooks, which honestly isn't much different from this year's invitation. And one of the Memojis, they had a bunch of different characters, right, with different Memojis. We made like a merch design for the podcast about it. They were just like Memojis looking at MacBooks, and one of them had a pair of glasses on, and I believe that pair of glasses had like a notification in the corner. And people saw that and ran with it, and they're like, oh my God, this is going to be it. This is totally it. This is when Apple Glass is going to launch. And the only reason I would say don't expect it is because people have literally expected it for the past 3 years now. Almost every single event we've gotten, almost every single presentation or invite image we've gotten, people are like, I think the one more thing, we could get a one more thing at this event. It could be Apple Glass. I know they've been working on Apple Glass. I remember thinking that before the September 2019 event when CoinX tweeted, we have one more thing. Everyone was like, oh, this is going to be Apple Glass. There's going to be a one more thing. And then at that November event just last year, that was called One More Thing. And Viper, I remember I came on his channel and he was saying like, hey, they say one more thing. I think we could get the M1 and we could get some Apple Glass. I think this could be it. So seeing a pair of glasses on a Memoji during an invite image and saying, is this confirmation of Apple Glass getting on? To me, it's a pretty big stretch. Cyber Octoling is saying there, it will come out when it's ready. And personally, looking at the rest of the market and looking at the rest of the augmented reality space, I don't think it's ready. That's just my guess. And it always is perpetually like a year away. That's what it feels like. I remember, because around May of last year, I think it was Prosser who was doing these giant leak bombs on everything that was going to come out with Apple Glass, and he was saying that it could be unveiled by the end of 2020, and if not then, but then by March of 2021, and obviously it didn't happen. And now if you ask people about Apple Glass, they're pretty much going to say, oh, actually, no, they're going to do mixed reality. They're going to do like a VR headset first, and they're going to do the VR headset later this year, and then Apple Glasses in 2023. And I'm sure by 2023 they'll be saying 2025. So I'm always going to be hesitant when there's leaks of this kind of stuff that feel years and years away. So I don't believe it. I don't believe it. The invites almost never mean anything. Almost hardly ever have leaks or any type of exclusive information. Quadruple UDC is June 7th through 11th, basically confirming Apple is partnering with 7-Eleven. Yes, that confirmation is official. The 7-Eleven partnership will be happening, thank God. Rage 104 says, I think BMW would be the likely partnership. They were the first to have Apple features like wireless CarPlay and the wallet thing for the car. That's not an unreasonable expectation, I would say. It seems like Apple and BMW get along pretty well. They like partnering on certain things. So if Apple wanted to kind of enhance, I don't know exactly what that would look like a CarPlay Plus or something, where basically Apple designs the entire interior. Like they design the seats, they design the display, they design the silicon that goes in the car, and maybe they even design some of the cameras that goes in the car, but the battery, the powertrain, the exterior, all that being controlled by another company. That I could see happening. I'm still somewhat tempted to say that Apple might want to buy out Lucid because they're kind of in startup mode right now, and they're trying to bring vehicles to market, and they have a pretty decent prototype, and they have road testing going on, and they have showrooms. And they're going for that kind of luxury premium brand. So I feel like an Apple-Lucid partnership would probably do pretty well. And they're all electric, which is cool because I'm sure Apple cares about the sustainability thing. BMW might too, but maybe not to the same extent as I think it would look bad for Apple if they unveiled a car that they partially worked on and it still used a combustion engine. I don't know. I don't think they would like it, but buying Lucid, I could see, because they're young enough that Apple could buy them out completely and not really lose much money on it. Tesla's gotten so big, Apple can't really buy them out. They legit don't even have the cash on hand, and Tesla probably doesn't even want to get bought out anymore because of how big they are, and they're not going to sell the company if it doesn't help them accelerate their mission. And Apple's mission is less about accelerating sustainable energy and more about creating the best products in the world. And Lucid, I feel like, is a tad more focused on the luxury segment, whereas Tesla is trying to figure out how do we get every car on the road to be electric. Apple's like, how do we make the best possible car? That's kind of their two differentiating mission statements. Seats need to be designed for crash protection and so on, so not really an Apple thing. Well, neither are AirTags. This is a new category. That's the whole point. To be like, oh, that's not an Apple thing. You could say that about the smartphone. Apple only makes iPods. They've never partnered with Verizon or AT&T before. They wouldn't make a phone. It's like, yeah, we're talking about expanding what they do. They could do, I'm sure Apple could get into crash protection and that kind of thing. They have patents on pizza boxes, okay? Apple worked really, really hard on a pizza box that they use in their company headquarters and nowhere else. And they took a patent on it because they were so proud of that pizza box. It's not really much of an Apple thing, but I really hope they buy Lucid without killing the Lucid brand. Yeah, they might. I mean, there's probably a lot of strength in Apple using their own brand instead of Lucid's because Apple has very high brand reputation. So if they reached a point where it wasn't called Lucid anymore and they just put the Apple logo on the car and it was just a subsection of Apple's website, that would probably help the car get on the map pretty well. But we were kind of expecting Apple to phase out Beats pretty quickly after they bought them, and they haven't really done that yet. It might be a long-term process, but so far they still got Beats. They're still promoting Beats. That's still a thing. Any rumors of Apple's search engine lately? Not lately, but I do remember reporting on that last year. I think it would be cool. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that Google is, quite a big monopoly when it comes to the search engine game, partly because no one really cares about switching the default search engine to Bing or Yahoo or whatever the other ones are. I can hardly remember. Or DuckDuckGo, that's the other one. Some people do. But I have a feeling that if Apple developed their own search engine and made it the default across all their devices, probably a lot of people wouldn't switch over. I know a ton of people that would, don't get me wrong. In fact, I would go as far as to say that maybe a decent chunk, like maybe 40% or 50% of Apple users would probably go into settings and switch it back to Google. But if it was default Apple, I bet a lot of people wouldn't notice. A lot of people in my personal life I know would not care. Like, they don't change that kind of thing. You know, the type of people that like never even change their wallpaper. Like, they have the exact same wallpaper that their phone had on day one, or they never rearrange their home screen. Like, their apps are just laid out how they installed them, just full pages of apps. There's a lot of people that do that. Would I switch to the Apple engine? Probably. I've tried using different search engines before. The truth is, I don't search that much, to be honest with you. With my current workflow and how I get my job done with video editing and checking Twitter and Discord regularly and doing live streams like this, there's not a lot of times I'm just like, there's a question. Let me look it up. Doesn't really happen very much. The times I do, like, DuckDuckGo is fine, and I've tried to switch to DuckDuckGo before, but the only time I'm actually searching things regularly is when I'm actually pulling pictures off the internet to use as B-roll shots for my videos. Like, I want to talk about this leak, or I want to talk about this car, or this render, or something, and I just want to grab a picture off the internet and put it in my Final Cut timeline. And DuckDuckGo wasn't as good at that. It was somewhat good, but the images never could really pull up exactly what I was looking for as well. It took a bit longer, and the images usually weren't as high quality when I was doing DuckDuckGo instead of Google. So that's why I still use Google search, is because when I need to find a picture of something and I want it to be high res and I want it to know exactly what I'm looking for, Google seems to be pretty good with that algorithm, and I can type in pretty vague things of, like, Tesla semi sighting 2021, and then I'd find the exact kilowatts picture I need. I'm like, cool, there it is. Whereas with DuckDuckGo, it's those kind of hyper-specific things that it wasn't as good at showing me, so it felt like my editing process was a bit slower because of it. So that's what partly made me think, like, okay. I don't love Google, and I don't like all of the data tracking they do, and I like DuckDuckGo's mission, and I'm glad that they're still around, and I'm glad a lot of people are using them. But for me, it was just slowing me down, and as a content creator, I know that privacy is kind of a myth for me anyway. Like, with so much of my information that I share with you guys and put on the internet, digital privacy is kind of a losing battle. But I have no problem with people standing up for it. So if Apple wanted to make one, go for it. I'd love I'm not against really Apple getting into any market. Name it. Should Apple make their own printer? Sure. Should Apple make a refrigerator? Yeah, go for it. Like, even things I probably wouldn't buy myself, I'm fine with my refrigerator. I don't need a new one. But if Apple wants to get into another market, get into another market. I like the way they design things. I like how seamless and simple they make things, and I'd be willing to check it out. So cameras is the big one. Whenever people ask me, what category would you want Apple to get into that they're not currently into, it's always cameras. I mainly just want a high-end camera like this one, or a Blackmagic or a Red Digital that has AirDrop. I think this whole process of having to write footage and data onto little cards, SD cards or CFast cards, and having to plug them into adapters into computers is so archaic and so unnecessary in today's world, with how fast we have 5G connectivity, or how fast we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth tech these days. I just want a way to send high-resolution footage to my computer, and I'm not talking about iPhone footage, because that's different. It's computational. They're doing their best to try to emulate a high-end camera, but it's never going to quite capture it. That's why Apple events aren't filmed with iPhone cameras. That's why a lot of Apple commercials aren't filmed with iPhone cameras. Some are, but you can tell. And when they do film them with iPhones, they make sure you know about it. They do shot on iPhone and all that. So if there was a way to do high-end, extremely heavy-duty cameras that you could airdrop footage, it would save so much time. That's what I want. Okay, the main issue is that the way you make money from search engines is by selling ads, and Apple has tried to distance themselves from that business. They also wouldn't be able to compete with Google's algorithm because they wouldn't collect data. That is an issue. I agree. That's probably some of the reasons Apple has decided not to get into the search engine game. And that's part of the reason I don't believe Apple could ever make a self-driving car as good as Tesla's, is because Tesla's full self-driving approach is very similar to Google's approach with the algorithm, is that people are basically training the system as they are using it, and Tesla is using that data to make the system better. And it doesn't sound like Apple would be the kind of company to collect that data and use that data. Basically, something Tesla did recently was they said that they were using the interior cabin cameras on their cars to check if drivers were paying attention or not. Now, personally, I feel like you're in a car, you're driving around in public, there's street cameras anyway, and it's a little different than, a company accessing a webcam or a camera in your house that's pointing it in your bedroom. That's different. But just a camera looking at you in the car, I could see Apple being the type of company to be like, oh, no, we care about privacy, we're hesitant. And they're just never going to have the same scale Tesla does. They have billions and billions of autonomous miles driven to collect from. Apple has a few private cars that they're testing, but I'm sure it's probably not even 1 million miles have been tested autonomously with their prototypes. So the data they have to work with, I don't think Apple could ever catch up on. They're probably just going to license it from them, but it's road data. Who cares? Not the interior cabin. That's not road data. That's paying attention to, that means someone is looking at you, paying attention to where your eyes are. And Apple is more hesitant to that type of thing. They're more against that type of thing. It's not just street data. It's like, I'm looking at you. I can see you picking your nose. I could see you. And Apple's whole thing is about subtle privacy. They've done whole ads about that. How if you're arguing with someone and then the waitress comes by to refill your water or something, you stop talking, right? It's like, do you have something to hide from her? No, it's private. That we want to keep that between me and you. So they probably have a similar thought process with the interior cabin camera thing. The Apple refrigerator wouldn't have doors or a power cable, probably not a box even. Lol, meme. I don't know why 31 Flavors has my sense of humor, I think. I don't know why that's funny to me, but when people do the over-the-top Apple thing would not have thing meme, I don't know, that makes me laugh. See, I am funny. I've achieved comedy. Apple fridge, not have port. Ha 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 ha. Apple sink, water not included. Well, that makes sense. Is there a sink with water included? I wouldn't want that. Seriously, though. Sorry for the frame drops. Starlink's looking. Starlink's looking. Is there a sink you can buy that comes with water? I have not seen that. Let's see. If Apple starts their own search engine, they'll be missing all the billions they get from Google or setting Google as the default in iOS. Right, but there's a lot of government intervention there that's saying that gives Google an unfair advantage, and that approaches the, what's it called? Oligopoly type of market where Google has dominance because they pay Apple every year just to be the search engine. No, I agree. I brought that up in my search engine videos. I'm like, Apple has very little incentive to make their own search engine because they can literally just do nothing and get billions of dollars a year from Google. But if the federal government steps in and decides that that's too much of a monopolistic practice and you can't do that anymore, you can't have those types of exclusive deals or cut certain discounts to big companies because you know that they're going to have massive scale and that kind of thing. If the government gets involved and decides, you can't do that, then Apple might be forced to make a search engine. It might not even be up to them. It'd be like, okay. Or they're just probably could save time and just set everything to DuckDuckGo by default. But, yeah, it'd be interesting. I'd like to see them try. Google still hasn't updated their app since their privacy nutrition on the App Store. I thought they did. I thought I read somewhere they did. They used to make their own printers. Apple did? I didn't remember that. Really? Marquez brought that up in one of his, what was it? I think it was his Ask MKBHD video recently. He said something about like a piece of tech that we all have to use but hate using. And the printer, I think, was a great example of that. It was like, yeah, there's still... You would have thought, like, 11 years after the iPad came out that paper would be kind of dead, or we wouldn't have really a point in printing documents anymore, and everything would be digital. And I'm sure, like, to a certain extent, maybe our paper consumption has gone down, but there's still a lot of things we got to print these days. I just keep running into situations where I'm like, oh yeah, shoot, we got to borrow a printer. We don't own one. We have to typically, like before the pandemic, we would just go to the library and get stuff printed. It was pretty cheap. Or we would go to like a family's house or a friend's house and they would print stuff for us. I would just email them a PDF, my dad or my sister or something, and just be like, you guys print this and drop it by next time we meet up. Usually it's like shipping labels. That's what it typically is for us. Haven't found a way to do that completely digital yet. I guess there are certain carriers that you can go directly to their store and they'll print the label there, but at least with a lot of Apple returns, they don't support that. So, and that's Apple. Come on, they're supposed to be the paperless company or whatever. All right, Craig Federighi is the new CEO. Oh wow, I believe you because it is a normal day. What is the one thing you want most for iOS 15, iPadOS 15, and for macOS 12? All right, we'll go over this then. iOS 15, I don't have a lot. My biggest request that I've had for years now that they have still not completely addressed is I want the death of the pop-up. There's almost no situation, in my opinion, where the pop-up animation makes sense on iOS. The idea that you should be in the middle of something and then some pop-up in the center of the screen shows up, jumps in front of you, and deactivates the rest of the display so you cannot interact with anything else until you address that pop-up. I feel like that should almost never happen, and it still happens pretty regularly on iOS. I don't understand why the 20% battery or 10% battery warning needs to be a pop-up. That should be a notification. It should just be a little drop-down thing that says, low battery, and then it goes away. It doesn't need to stop everything you're doing because usually I'm in the middle of something or I'm trying to text somebody or I'm checking email or I'm interacting with something and it's like, your battery is low. I'm like, I know, that's great. Don't make me interact with it. It's an unnecessary step. And sometimes I think this is a bug, but sometimes I've even seen those little battery warnings or pop-ups. Like I would get the battery warning as my device was charging. Like I would plug it in because I knew the battery was low and then I would open it and it would say, battery low at 10%, and it's already at 12%. It's like, you're charging. I've already addressed it. There should never be a low battery warning if the device is plugged in and going up in a charge, okay? If it's going down in a charge because it's not getting enough power from the charger, that's one thing, but that's typically not what's happening. So, yeah, the pop-up thing is my main thing. There were times where I would set up a new phone and they would be like, oh, you need to re-enter your password for this email, and that would be a pop-up. It would like, I couldn't do anything on the phone until I entered that password, and I was like, it doesn't need to be a pop-up. Just put a notification that says like, hey, enter your password when you get the chance, and then it goes away, and then you can, activate it later, go to that notification, and then re-enter your password. But like taking over the entire display for one notification is just silly to me, and that's still something that happens regularly. Other than that, interactive widgets I would appreciate. I still think it was intentionally nerfed. I think that last year they didn't let widgets be very interactive just because they wanted something to add this year. So like a now playing widget basically, I feel like that was one of the first things I wanted to see. Or like a HomeKit widget where you could control your smart bulbs and control part of your smart home without opening the app. Instead, widgets are kind of useless in their current state. They basically just give you slightly more information than the app icon, but that's about it. There's very little actual interactivity that Apple allows for. Like the music widget is so pointless to me. It just shows you like recently played, and then if you tap it, you got to open the app anyway. So it's like just a now playing, just a little play, pause, and a skip thing. That's all it has to be. Come on. Do you think Apple Watch will ever be an Apple education store? Yeah. It's kind of hard product to sell as an educational device. There's not a lot of education stuff you can do on it. I know they have like kids modes and stuff, but I don't know. Part of me thinks it's too cheap. It'd be like AirPods going on the education store. I guess sometimes they do the like buy a Mac for college, get free AirPods. Maybe they could do that with the Apple Watch someday. Buy a Mac, get a free Apple Watch. But that's about it. My thing is a now playing widget or home widget is just go to Control Center. Yeah, but the whole point of a widget is to skip that step. If you're going to say go to Control Center, I could just say, okay, just open the app. You don't need widgets at all. The whole point of having a widget in my mind was that, okay, I can now do something from the home screen I didn't have to open something else for. The idea was, let's say here, let's pretend this widget is a now playing widget. I can just have one call to action. I just tap once, play. Music starts playing. Now I want the music to stop. Stop. Instead of swipe down, play, and then go back. And then when I want it to stop, swipe down, stop. It's an extra step. The whole purpose of the widget is to bypass more steps, because instead of like before when we didn't have this, um, let's see, yeah, when we didn't have these previous widgets, if I wanted to check the stock price of something, I would have to open the app and check on the stocks. But now with the stock widget, I can perpetually, for a decent amount of time, have the stock price lists, so I don't have to take that extra step of opening the app. So making non-interactive widgets is like half the battle. It's like, okay, you got part of it right, but you didn't take it all the way. Let's see. You getting an M1? Probably not. I came really, really close. I was thinking about it because the M1 Mac Mini is just so good, and I've heard so many nice things about it. Yeah, it had some Bluetooth issues, and I've heard some concerns about the SSD. They're not as bad as people were saying they were, but it's still some first generation type issues. But Nick really seems to love his, and I loved using the MacBook Air with M1. My only complaint was the I/O, and I don't really want a laptop for my desk. I tried to go back to using a laptop, and I'm like, it's not really my thing. But M1 was pretty much better than my iMac Pro in every way except one, and it's sadly a bit of an important one. So M1 has great real-time playback in Final Cut editing, and I can do my OBS live streaming and stuff. Fantastic, and apps open really, really quick, much quicker than my iMac Pro. And when I'm editing a video on the M1, there's like no latency, there's no hanging, there's no dropped frames. I could edit all of my 4K 60 footage, really, really high bit rate, and without much compression, and just the editing experience was seamless, and it was great. But the only side-by-side comparison where the iMac Pro came a little bit ahead was the export times, which just meant that how the M1 chip displays content in real time is much better than the iMac Pro 8-core Xeon chip, whatever this thing has. But the speed at which my iMac Pro can write a new file, so it's not so much about real-time playback, but more about like, okay, the video is done, time to export it, time to create a new file that's a certain size, the video is done. The iMac Pro still came in the lead there. So if I were to get an M1 Mac Mini, it would still technically be a downgrade in that regard. The real-time editing playback and how quickly apps open and how seamless everything works together, that would be an upgrade. So I was kind of tempted to just be like, I want a smoother editing experience. I want apps to open instantly. I love the M1 chip, and I'm kind of sick of how Intel is acting these days, and Intel feels so unnecessary. And knowing that I could get a $700 little box that can do just about as good as my iMac Pro is really tempting, because then I could use, I have a 32-inch 4K monitor over here I could hook up. I could have a bigger screen, and I could save a lot of money instead of buying an Apple Silicon iMac. But I've decided that if I do upgrade my iMac Pro, I want it to be with something that's better in every metric, not just most. So Mac Mini's fantastic. I know it's had some problems. I've seen the quality control or the monitor bugs and that kind of thing. So I'm glad that Apple's kind of figuring out the kinks right now so that they can hopefully have it all ironed out by the time I'm ready to upgrade. But yes, I do want whatever the next one is called, the M1X or the M2, which sounds like it shouldn't be that long away, that far away. Potentially, we could be looking at that next Apple Silicon launch for the rest of the lineup, whether it's just a 24-inch iMac or just a 14-inch MacBook Pro, or just, I don't know what the hardware is going to look like, but a chip faster than the M1 that's made by Apple, whatever that is, I'll be very, very interested, because as long as it can export videos faster than my iMac Pro, then it's an upgrade. And I'm sure that the M1 is faster in pretty much every other metric, so I'm very tempted. At this point, I don't think they'll do this, but if they made a Mac Mini that had 4 USB-C ports, and it had the next chip, not the M1, but it had the M2 or the M1X, something that was much faster than the M1, I would be very, very tempted to just get that instead of the redesigned iMac, because the redesigned iMac sounds cool, But if the price isn't good and something tells me it's going to be more expensive than the current iMacs because it's going to have thinner bezels, and every time you have a big redesign like that, it almost always comes with a price hike, and it's kind of inevitable to act like you can ditch your chin, ditch your thick bezels, and build this whole redesign, but because that requires retooling of supply chains. Apple's been designing iMacs that look practically the same for a decade, so they have that economy of scale to the point that they can get iMacs built pretty cheap, and that's how we have iMacs today that are between $1,000 and $2,000 that are pretty good, but they're old and they're dated, and the hardware in them isn't very good anymore. So that's why I wouldn't recommend anybody buy one. But I if there was a substantial cheaper way to get the same amount of performance, that honestly is like the more responsible thing to do financially. I've just, like, me and my wife have we've gotten into a lot of investing recently, and we've kind of gotten that bug of wanting to buy certain stocks and invest more and get certain dividends and reinvest those stocks and build up passive income. So that's kind of where a lot of our financial focus is right now. So that's why I don't have, a Pro Display XDR or a Mac Pro. As much as I probably could afford those things, I could probably justify it as, well, I need it for work and that's for my job. So, okay, here's my paycheck this month. That's going to go towards this next Big Mac purchase at McDonald's. But honestly, it's like the main reason I would want to get a newer computer than this one, aside from the design, would be I want to export videos faster and I want it to run better. And this one's coming up on 4 years old. So that's about the time, I think, for a content creator, someone who uses a computer pretty regularly for their job, wants to make sure they have something that runs reliably and runs fast and can get videos out quickly. So export times is pretty crucial to me, because with Final Cut, at least, when you're exporting, you can't edit at the same time. So as soon as you start editing, the export slows down. So uploading a video can take a little longer. I don't really care. That's why I'm fine with Starlink over Xfinity. It's like, okay, the upload speed right now is a bit slower, but over time it's getting a lot faster. But I'm okay with it being a bit slower, because it just means that in the background a video is taking a little longer to upload. But as long as it's uploading and I can edit a video, then I can still be productive. But if a video is taking forever to export, then that means I can't edit a video during that process. So just the fact that the M1 takes a little bit longer to export is reason for me to not get it. So I want Apple Silicon as soon as possible, though. I'm hoping to make that upgrade at some point this year. So M2 Mac Mini for the win. Yes, that's what I would be in favor of. Like a $2,000 Mac Mini that has a ton of storage and has 4 USB-C ports and Apple Silicon on the inside, and just as fast as the Apple Silicon iMac, just cheaper because it doesn't come with a monitor. That'd be perfect. But sorry, I ignored part of Mike's question back earlier. He was asking about my favorite things. Yeah, iPadOS 15, I did that video on basically 3 changes that the iPad needs for me, which is Final Cut Pro, revamped external monitor support, and external webcam support. Those are the 3 main things I want. Everything else feels pretty trivial. Like, yeah, it would be nice if it had its own weather app and a calculator app. That I say that every year, but Apple still hasn't done it every year. So I'm still not expecting them to do it this year. I feel like if they haven't done it now, there's probably a reason. Maybe they're just tabling it for a rainy day. They're just like, when we're out of ideas, I guess we should launch a iPad calculator app or iPad weather app. But it's not really going to make or break an upgrade for me. It's like, okay, great, calculator, got it, thanks. But the 3 primary ones are I know that iPads technically have external monitor support, but it's basically just like screen mirroring, and I want it to be able to scale just like macOS does with external monitor support, where you could plug an iPad into a 16:9 monitor and it would just reformat to a 16:9, but still be running iPadOS, and you could have your mouse and keyboard interaction. And basically, I want to be able to have high performance editing on the iPad, and then when I dock it to a bigger screen, I can edit on the big screen, and then when I want to take it on the go, I can. So Xcode, Logic, all the pro-grade applications. When I say Final Cut, that's the main thing I want, but in a grander sense, yes, I really just mean like more heavy-duty applications that are on the Mac that aren't on the iPad. But they are now optimized to run on Apple Silicon, which is powering the iPad. They did that Mac Mini Dev Kit last year, run with an A12Z chip. They literally put an iPad chip in a Mac, and that Mac was running Final Cut, Logic, and Xcode. So it's like, okay, the software is running on iPad hardware. You just haven't necessarily put it on the iPad itself. You just put it on the iPad chip. So that's that's making us all think like, I think it's possible. I think it's physically possible for Apple to just release a version of Final Cut on the iPad. Maybe they aren't sure they want to butcher the Mac lineup like that quite yet. Let's see. Raise your hand if you want the next macOS to be macOS Weed. And we get to see the crack Apple marketing team led by Craig go on their adventure across California again. Yes, absolutely. Hands up for me. Apple surely is working on that new weather app ever since they bought that Android weather app. Yeah, Dark Sky. They've put a lot of Dark Sky features into the weather app. I'm kind of surprised Apple didn't turn it into a service. I thought when Apple bought Dark Sky, they were like, a company has found a way to get people to subscribe monthly for the weather. Interesting. And I thought they were going to take that and basically turn it into Apple Weather Plus, because it sounds like Apple wants everything to be a subscription service these days. And I still say that's somewhat possible, but so far they haven't done it, and they seem to have just added a bunch of features to the weather app, which I don't really get how that helps them much. I guess it's just a good selling point for iOS. It's like, hey, my weather app's better now. All right. I don't know. They didn't really profit much off of that purchase, but I guess, I don't know. Do you guys know people that are like, Android's cool and all, but I just love that iOS weather app. The weather app is so good. I could never leave iOS. I don't know. Well, I'm not sure what their logic was with that. They should have taken Dark Sky and copy and pasted into the weather app. That's kind of what they did. I mean, it's Dark Sky's UI and stuff wasn't really that pretty, in my opinion. So making it integrated into the iOS app so that you still know all the things that Dark Sky know, just in a more clean interface. Yeah. The Android weather app is actually garbage. Half the screen is ads. Well, is there just one, though? Like, does Google have one, but then Samsung also has one, and then OnePlus also has one? The ironic part is everyone I know on iOS still uses Dark Sky. I knew like one person who uses Dark Sky. It's just, I don't get it. It seems so useless to me to like, I don't know. Why would I pay for something that I could figure out by looking outside, you know? They don't know. No one knows if it's going to rain. We've been doing this for years and people still don't get it. The Samsung one is what I was referring to. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Android has like a million weather apps probably. I don't like the full color UI for the weather app in the widget. What do you want it to be like solid white or solid black? That's like your opinion, man. Okay. So I answered the iPad OS one, calculator, weather, Final Cut, external monitor, revamp, and external webcam. External webcam would be a big one, actually, because if you could, what I'm in favor of, like we talked about earlier, even more so than just bringing AirDrop to third-party cameras, like if you brought AirDrop to Blackmagic or Red Digital or something. Fun fact, my buddy in the Air Force, I'm really excited, he's coming home next month, Ross from Tailosive Airsoft. He just bought a Red Komodo camera, like the one with the 6K sensor. And it just got delivered to his family's house because he's out of the country right now, so he can't ship it to him. But he just took delivery of it, so I'm not going to unbox it until he gets back. He offered. He was like, hey, you should unbox this. I was like, I want to wait until you're back because I don't want to take that experience from you. But that's a really nice camera. Yes, he bought a Red camera, which is dope. But anyway, my main point was the main reason I want AirDrop on a camera is because I want to bypass the process of CFast cards and SD cards having to record something, take the media out, plug it into an adapter, is so frustrating. And if you do direct external webcam support so that you can use a cam link or something with an iPad, that's another way you can bypass the whole process. Because if iPad allowed external webcam support, they could have programs, and Elgato could make applications that allow you to record a camera, just like this one, just like I'm doing right now with OBS. You would take your footage from this lens, write it at a high bit rate even. It doesn't have to be heavily compressed. It could still look really crispy and really high quality. It could still be 4K or 60 frames a second, and feed that directly into the iPad interface. And this is kind of the cool thing. You can do this with laptops, but laptops are usually a tad heavier and a bit clunkier, so it's a bit more difficult. But iPads are pretty small and light, so you could like attach them to the camera. Imagine if they made accessories for either the Blackmagic or the Red digital Komodo cameras and that kind of thing. They could even, Smart Connector doesn't do data, but you could just dock them with the camera, write the footage directly to the tablet, pull the tablet off the camera, and then edit it right on there. You don't even need an SD card adapter. You don't even need a CFast card adapter. You're just writing footage from the HDMI port on the camera directly in, and there's probably a little bit of compression. I know that. You probably can't do raw video or ProRes video. It's going to be slightly compressed, but for the everyday folk or the everyday YouTuber content creator, that would be a godsend. If you could just have an iPad and a decent camera like this, plug it directly in, write the footage directly on, so you're basically recording the video right into your Final Cut timeline, and then you edit it right on there. The Smart Connector does do data. It's just a very small amount. That's why I was saying it wouldn't make sense to write data right through the Smart Connector. It does an extremely small amount of data, like typing on a keyboard. You can do a little bit of data transfer, but like compared to the Type-C port, it's nothing. It's very little. So that's why it would most likely have to take advantage of the USB-C port. But still, that functionality would be incredible. A lot of cameras have Wi-Fi transfer, which is at least kind of a solution. Yeah, but it's really clunky. I've used it before. It's not very good. You have to like change the Wi-Fi network the computer is on to connect to it, and their applications are weird and bumpy. I know Wi-Fi transfer is a thing. It's not been Apple-ified, It's not been ironed out, simplified to be easy and simple to understand. Yeah, there's no Bluetooth on the Magic Keyboard, but irrelevant, but I think Apple has been preparing a new Siri for years. They've bought all these great AI companies that have far better technologies than Siri, so it doesn't make sense to keep the old Siri since their backbone is probably a mess and they have the means, all these companies, to make a better one, a complete rewrite. They've been buying a lot, but the thing is, Siri isn't necessarily like a solid one-time piece of software. It's not really the same as an iOS or an iPadOS. Siri, every time you use Siri, she has to connect to a server, a database, and her response changes based on what that database or what that server has decided Siri is going to respond with, which means that they can fluently and continuously update or change Siri at their will, essentially. There's not like a big Siri 1.5 or Siri. It's the same thing with Google Assistant. Ever since Google Assistant came out, it just occasionally gets new capabilities, but it's not like upgrade your Google Assistant to version 2.3 for more features. It's just kind of the Google Assistant, and whenever you call out to it, it pulls from whatever the latest database is. So people have been saying they're going to revamp Siri or have some kind of big Siri refresh eventually, but then it never happens. In fact, I feel like last quadruple UDC Siri wasn't mentioned at all. But I know they've been hiring lots of AI companies and buying up all these different brands. I don't think people really understand what is wrong with Siri. They just know Siri bad, the same way people say Apple Maps bad. There's not like a ton of stuff that people list of Siri can't do this and that's why she sucks. They're just like they're just like, oh, I think Siri's not good. Why? I can't set two timers at the same time. Okay, there's not like a big AI company or a big machine learning company that's going to allow Siri to set two timers. It's just like a weird little thing Apple hasn't thought of yet for whatever reason. They didn't announce many Siri changes, but I don't know. To me, people can't be very precise with what they don't like. The digital assistant war is all the same as like smartphone camera wars. It's just kind of a brand thing. It's like, Pixel the best, Pixel the best, Pixel the best, Samsung not as good. Even if Samsung cameras look amazing and the cameras are doing these crazy photography tricks and everything, it's like, yeah, but Pixel better though. Pixel's still good. It's like, why is it better? I don't know. It just looks better. It's the same thing with digital assistants. Like, No, I don't even think Alexa's that bad. I've used Alexa before. They all do the basic stuff pretty fine. Like, people just say certain assistants are bad all the time, but I never ever hear specifics. People never are able to specify like, "Oh, I was trying to do this and Siri couldn't do it." And if they do, it's usually sometimes a lot of the times actually, it's often something Google can't do either. They were like, "I asked Siri what phone I was talking to her on and she didn't realize it." And then I asked Google Assistant, like, what kind of speaker are you? And it didn't know. I'm like, they're all kind of dumb and they're all kind of handy. I don't notice a huge difference between all of them. Having used all of the different digital assistants, they all feel pretty useless / somewhat helpful when my hands are tied. That's pretty much how I feel about all of them. I don't see as Google Assistant being substantially better. I don't see Siri being substantially worse. Sure, Google Assistant's probably the best one because it has the biggest algorithm of devices to train from, and I don't know. It's all of the issues people can bring up with digital assistants never really would be solved by an AI company, which is why I don't believe them picking up all these. They hired some guy from the Google Assistant team like years ago, and that of course never changed anything. So I don't think there's a big revamp coming, but I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong on that. I'd love to see Siri get a bunch more capability. I still just don't think people would use her because it's too awkward of a process. Digital assistants, it's a lot easier to tap and interact with certain screens sometimes than it is to try to articulate exactly what you want. People aren't necessarily very good at articulating things they want. Sometimes it's a lot easier to just interact. But anyway, I appreciate you all watching. Appreciate you all for the Twitch Primes and the bits. I'm glad I got to stream again today. Sorry for the Starlink bumpiness, but hope you have an excellent rest of your day. New videos are in the works. They'll be dropping later. Take care, all. Bye-bye.